Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Linc'd In Podcast, a very special episode of the Linc'd In Podcast on the Sideline Sports Network. You guys just saw a brand new Sideline Sports intro with all the shows. Make sure you guys are checking out not only the show, but all the great shows that are a part of the network and the Sideline Sports family. Tonight, we're going to be talking about all kinds of Eagles stuff. I got to get my co-host with the most, Lindy, in the building on his birthday. Happy birthday, Lindy. And everyone in the comments, make sure you wish the man a happy birthday because it has been really awesome doing this podcast and, being a team with the combined two of us has been great. So awesome stuff, Lindy. Happy birthday, man. Hope you've been enjoying it.
I appreciate it. And you know what? We're only 8 episodes in. We're close to eclipsing 10. You know, that's coming up soon. And birthdays aren't what they used to be, but still, it's still a nice celebration. Just trying to remember I'm not a year older. My sister trying to tell me I'm a year away from 30. I'm like, can I just enjoy 29 first? You rushing it.
And Randall says, happy birthday, Lindy, in the comment section. What is going on, Randall?
Appreciate
and what is
you,
going on? Reaper also here in the comment section. So let's get to it. First up, Philadelphia Eagles Player of the Week this week. Guess who? Nick Foles, the Super Bowl champion in 2017, the Super Bowl MVP, as they would call him. I'm not probably allowed to say on the network, but in other words, Swole Pole Foles is the man. And you got to say, outside of his heroics of the Super Bowl, he had other great moments that's not really, talked about enough. So, Lindy, for you, obviously the Super Bowl is going to be something that's unforgettable in the eyes of anyone that was involved with the team, front office, teammates, players, coaches, whatever, and especially the fans. But for you, when you're looking at Nick Foles' career with the Eagles, what is the biggest thing, Lindy, that is sticking out to you when you're looking at Nick?
I think before the Super Bowl, one thing that you can always think about when it comes to Nick Foles is that he always seemed to be underappreciated, and aside from that gimmick type of season that he had, because that's all people want to call it, and Chip Kelly's no huddle collegiate-based offense and just trying to tire out defenses. I mean, he still went 27-2 that season, although the team itself wasn't efficient. I mean, they finished 10-6, but 2 out of the 3 years for Chip Kelly, the team went 10-6. Foles was their quarterback, and I think after the shoulder injury that he had, he kind of fell to the wayside a little bit. Although I still remember that day when he did injure his shoulder. I think it was against Washington, and I remember everybody coming to, his aid and his defense. And I know Jason Peters was one of the most pissed off guys when he seen the hit that Foles took. He was ready to take some heads off. And I remember that.
Yeah, I remember that. Absolutely.
Whenever it was, whether it was that game, whether it was the, tying the record for most touchdowns in a single game against the Raiders with 7. Obviously we got to touch upon the Super Bowl and him coming in a pitch after a MVP-esque season by Carson Wentz, to which it was either him or Tom Brady. And then, well, lo and behold, Nick Foles ends up beating Tom Brady and puts 41 points on that Bill Belichick defense. But I mean, let's be real. Both defenses were terrible that game, but it was about who was going to make the play at the right time. And well, Brandon Graham did, but they couldn't have done it without, as much as people want to say that Wentz could have won that game too, the one thing Carson did not have was, just the veteran wisdom that Foles has possessed to that point and being in those moments and being in those games. Granted, it wasn't as deep as the Super Bowl. I mean, whether it was losing to the Saints or it was one special team blunder away and they lost by a field goal or what have you. But I mean, he'll always be remembered for that. He'll be remembered as, I think, being selected before Russell Wilson when the Eagles could have had the chance to, take a chance on Russ. And I think Foles got selected before him. But
funny thing
there's
is
just
the draft. They actually wanted to draft Foles and draft Russ.
Right.
Yeah,
right. But either way, man, it's a shame. It's a shame where he is now. I think he's 33, going to be 34 years old. He's bounced from team to team, and it sucks to not see him as a starter anymore because it seems that magic has gone away. But no matter where he goes, he's still an asset to any football team. Chicago, Jacksonville, where he tried. I think he suffered a collarbone injury there again, and then he gets stuck on the Bears, where they managed to keep Andy Dalton and him.
It's a pretty good spot for him. So what about in terms of is there a particular game that stands out to you, the performance by Nick Foles that, other than the Super Bowl and the NFC Championship, of course, that stands out to you the most?
Other than the Super Bowl, man, that Raiders game throwing 7 touchdowns was absolutely magical. I mean, granted he was probably having a game of Madden on casual or easy if you want, because the Raiders were an absolute dumpster fire that year. But still, I mean, he was, I wish he wasn't taken out in the fourth quarter. I'm sorry. They should have let him finish that game. Or at least he definitely would have gotten number 8. I don't know why they took him out of that game. I'm sorry. That was
nonetheless, his jersey and cleats and everything of that game was still sent to the Hall of Fame.
Right.
It's really awesome. But in terms of Nick Foles, I really think that it is sad the way things ended up. More so in his first stint. I mean, also in his second stint, because coming off of that Super Bowl win, the team was pretty much dead in the water, and Foles comes when Carson gets hurt with a back injury, and the team becomes, revitalized. They beat the Rams, who were a very good team back in that season in 2018. And the Rams actually went on to the Super Bowl. They won the NFC. But Nick kind of revived the team there, and then it sparked a little bit of a run. But in terms of his first stint, he was pretty much thrown into the fire when he was a rookie quarterback. 2012, when Michael Vick was the starter at the time, got hurt, and he had to come in and play some games. He did not have a lot of success because it was a very bad football team, obviously. And then, Vic comes in for the 2013 season. Everyone said Vic was the perfect fit of the Chip Kelly offense. It's a match made in heaven. And for the first couple games, it did. It seemed like that because Vic was actually lighting it up. And then Michael Vick gets hurt against the New York Giants with a hamstring injury. And in comes Nick Foles, and he pretty much never turned back for that season and finished with the 27 touchdowns and the 2 interceptions as the Eagles would go on to win the NFC East and host a home playoff game, losing to the New Orleans Saints, where Nick Foles actually had a pretty good performance going up against Drews, who went to the same high school as Nick Foles did, where Nick Foles broke some of his records, which was really a big storyline going into that game, I do remember. And the following season is the main thing I want to focus on, because I really feel as though Nick was on his way to becoming that franchise quarterback of the team. But it was taken away from him by head coach at the time, Chip Kelly, who was very extremely egotistical. In fact, he was maniacally egotistical. It was absolutely insane what came over him with the power struggle. It started with Deshaun Jackson in 2014. Then it went on to Nick Foles being traded for Sam Bradford, and everyone remembers Shady McCoy for Kiko Alonso, among all the other moves that were made. But keep in mind that while Nick Foles' stats were kind of like dropping off a bit compared to his very good season in 2013, keep in mind at the time of Nick Foles' injury where he broke his collarbone against the Houston Texans, the team was 6-2. So by definition, Nick Foles he might have not even been a good quarterback. By definition, he was probably more or less of an average quarterback, actually, in terms of his talent and his skill. But in the bigger moments, Nick Foles was able to put the team in a good position to win those games, which is a major reason why he had the confidence when he was going in and throwing in after Carson Wentz was hurt. So that was a big thing there. But I really feel as though in 2014, if Nick Foles does not get injured, things could have been very differently. I believe Nick Foles would have went on to be a franchise quarterback of the team, and things would have been a lot differently. I think I always had a feeling that Nick was going to have a chance to lead us to a Super Bowl. The way that he did ultimately do that was not the way I had expected it, but it still happened. It still happened. But as far as Nick coming back, that was one of the best stories that you could even think of. You know, you have a guy that once he gets traded to the Rams, it really did something to him in a negative way. Being coached
by Jeff Fisher.
Being coached by Jeff Fisher, as I was it kind of messed a lot of things up for him. And, you know, mentally he was just done. And then he's on a camping trip, and Andy Reid calls him up and gets him to come out of retirement. And then he ends up in Kansas City and he plays a couple of games. And Andy Reid was a major reason why Nick was able to get his confidence back. So if it's not for Andy Reid doing that for Nick Foles, there's a chance that the Eagles would not have won the Super Bowl in 2017 if it was not for that happening. So for Nick coming in after everything they went through to achieve the highest level, going up against Tom Brady, going toe-to-toe against Tom Brady in the Super Bowl and winning the Super Bowl MVP in the first ever Super Bowl to boot in Philadelphia, that was amazing. But as far as my personal favorite moment of Nick Foles, besides that little run, it's a lot different. And it wasn't in the 2013 season, that great season. It's not the 7-touchdown performance that sticks out to me. This game is a lot different, and the real diehard fans will remember this game because it was the highlight of the 2012 season as the Eagles were on a 8-game losing streak against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Foles leads a game-winning drive. He finds Jeremy Maclin in the end zone as time went to all zeros. It was a very poised performance by Nick Foles, who was a rookie quarterback. Keep in mind, I was into the fire on a very bad team. He showed great poise, and then obviously that poise evolved, and we saw how far his poise came as he won the Super Bowl. So that is my favorite memory of Nick Foles. Those are the things that stick out to me as far as being an Eagles fan. Every real Eagles fan is always going to love and respect Nick for what he was able to do, guys. So that is it for our Player of the Week segment, ladies and gentlemen.
I don't know about you, but I think the double doink game goes underrated sometimes with him.
That was a good game-winning drive as well.
That Bears defense, that Bears defense was nasty during that 2018 season. It was very good. Foles comes back in there and he's trying to use Golden Tate, and he ends up going on another touchdown drive to take the lead, and it took a double doink to win that game. But that was an aggressive like clawing your way through kind of game between us and the Bears in 2018. And I think that goes unnoticed sometimes. That I don't know if I think we needed Foles for that game. To be quite honest, I don't know at that point if Wentz was going to win that game either, because he was coming off of that, the knee injury and all that stuff.
But wasn't actually playing very well. 2018.
No.
Everyone points to his stats and said, "Oh, look at his stats! Like 21 touchdowns, 7 interceptions." It was clear and obvious that they had rushed Carson back from the injury. He was a statue in the pocket. He wasn't able to do anything. So that's why the offense was looking very stagnant. But, guys, when we get back from the commercial break, we are going to take a look at Miles Sanders and the interesting comments that he had to say this week.
I'm running like my hair is on fire, and I don't intend to stop even when my legs grow tired. And I got a message from Colorado straight from Texas, captured most of me, just let me be.
So, ladies and gentlemen, Miles Sanders had some very interesting comments to make. Right here, we all feel like we are an all-star team. We feel unstoppable. Miles. This is the exact stuff that you don't want to do, okay? And I have a huge issue with Miles coming out and doing this for a few reasons. When you look at great championship caliber, consistent winning teams, you don't have players that are loud and, trying to bring attention to themselves, trying to put a target on the team like Miles is trying to do here. A lot of people will say, oh, well, he's just trying to show his confidence and everything. It's not confidence. It's a little bit of arrogance, in my opinion, because especially coming from someone like Miles Sanders. Miles Sanders, with all due respect to him, is still an unproven player. He's a player that cannot stay healthy. He's a player that has had issues fumbling the football, turning the ball over. He's had issues dropping passes out of the backfield. He has not rushed for 1,000 yards to date in his career, coming off a season with 0 touchdowns. So if you're going to talk like this, Miles, you are really going to have to up your game. You are already having pressure on you because you're in a contract year. But now that you're doing this and you're bringing this attention to the team when you didn't really need to do that, the pressure is even more on you, Miles, to step up to the plate and perform at the highest level. So Miles Sanders needs to have a breakout season this year and back up his talk, because while the team is very, very talented, this reeks of PTSD 2011, Vince Young saying this is the dream team, all this other stuff. This was unnecessary. This was kind of frustrating to see, and we just didn't need to do that. And for whatever reason, Miles decided it was a great idea. And keep in mind, we're not even in training camp. If this happened in training camp where you're saying, oh, the chemistry is doing this, we're looking good, we're feeling like an all-star team, we don't feel like anyone can, that's different. Because you're actually doing something and building that chemistry, and sometimes things just happen in the spur of the moment. But for Miles to do this before even training camp, at least wait for training camp when you're actually doing stuff. At least wait for preseason when you're actually doing something, instead of just when you're on vacation just doing something. It was just completely unnecessary, and I had a huge issue with it.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is what it is sometimes with these players, and they get a bit of overexcitement going on, and in the case of Miles, I get where he's coming from. I understand and everything, and but his biggest problem right now is, well, while you're a kid that's easy to root for, and to this point in his career for the Eagles, he's still a fan favorite. Everyone has, everyone just, they don't wane their faith in him. They still keep their expectations, appropriately high for him. But when the problem is when your rookie year is still your best year, that's an issue. That like you can't be in a worse position to me, in my opinion. Because when you've set the premise as to the display of your talent coming out of college, and you put it on the table in the way that Miles did his rookie year. Granted, it was not perfect, but he showed us he can run the football. He showed us that he can catch it as a receiving back. He became one of Wentz's favorite targets when Ertz wasn't available, and then he just didn't really take that next step yet. And as a growing player in the NFL, that's the biggest thing that's holding him back right now. He's averaging at points over 5 yards a carry, and yes, he does have efficiency in that regard. And yes, you can arguably say that his touches are less than what they should be a lot of the time, between Sirianni and Doug Peterson respectively. But sometimes you have to earn those opportunities first in order to get the football. Let us remember going back to 2019 when he was coming out, getting selected at the same number in the same round, same draft selection as Shady McCoy, and everyone is connecting the dots in that way, and how much of a coincidence it was, and they're from the same area, and is he going to be the next running back that we give an extension to? And he shows us in 2019 on how dynamic he can be, at the position, and let us remember in that year, it's the same year that the Eagles picked up Jordan Howard. So, that's a Jordan Howard that he himself has had, I think, at least 3,000-yard rushing seasons, a power back that you can rely on to, really push through up the middle in the line of scrimmage, and he's splitting carries with him. Okay, well, over the years, Jordan Howard is on and off this football team, but in the committee approach that the Eagles use with running backs, who's really behind him that poses any kind of threat to him as being the number one running back on this football team? Absolutely nobody. We have a lot of excitement with Kenny Gainwell, and Boston Scott is good in his role, and Jason Huntley has gone out there a few times, but there's nobody behind Miles that's good enough to give him any sort of challenge. So if you're in that kind of situation, you would think that you would try to make the most of your opportunities and take it from a year-to-year basis to improve on the mistakes that you continue to make. He's still inconsistent with his vision. He's not good in terms of picking up blocks and protection. He's terrible at that. Boston Scott is bad at that. Kenny Gainwell is not meant for that. So when he's needed in blitz pickup, it was the one video I think
he's talking a lot to a player that's not proven anything.
Yeah, exactly. Didn't we see the one video where he's crossing Jalen Hurts' face, and he completely disrupts the play by crossing his face and everything? Like, dude, what are you doing? Countless miscommunication issues. So to bottom line everything, aside from his inconsistencies on the field, and not being on the field in the first place because he's only averaging about 12 to 13 games a year, number one, you got to stay healthy. And two, you haven't given us anything to fall back on to say that, okay, well, maybe he has a point in being irritated with the lack of contribution that he is given from an offensive standpoint, because, well, it's up to the play caller, it's up to the head coach in determining how he's going to affect this football game. Okay, well, you have to show us you can do that on a more consistent basis first.
Exactly. And that's the problem. I don't think the coaching staff has that full confidence in him, because they do give him the opportunities, and something just always seems to happen. Like you said, he's not reading his blocks correctly, not getting the yards that he needs to be getting, fumbling the ball on our side of the field. Seemed to happen quite a bit last season, and it's just ridiculous. And Miles is not a guy, to wrap this up, Miles is not a guy that's proven anything. I would not be thrilled if another player on the team that did this. But for example, I'll use Lane Johnson, because we know that Lane has been very, very outspoken in the past. And if he had said something about this stuff, then I would have probably had less of a problem, because Lane's been an all-pro. He's been in the conversation as best right tackle in the NFL. And Miles, we don't even know if this guy's been in the conversation for even a top 10 running back, even a top 15 running back, even possibly. So you haven't proven anything, and you're just talking too much. It's just not something that I would want to do. And he wasn't even on the team when we won the Super Bowl. If you haven't achieved anything, if you haven't won anything, then why are you talking? Like, just focus on yourself, focus on putting the work in for the season and proving everyone wrong. All this comments about being an all-star team is very arrogant, and I do not think it is a good thing for the team, but hopefully everything will blow over. Moving on.
No, I'll say this much. The frustration is only elevated because of the value that we spent in drafting this kid in the second round. It would be different if it's like an undrafted free agent in Kennedy Brooks,
or if it's hype him up. They hype him up to be something.
Exactly. I mean, that's the only reason. If you're gonna talk the talk, you have to walk the walk first. I mean, two things have to happen here.
In terms of our offense, I do believe that we are stacked. However, if I had to say who is the linkest link of this offense, it's Miles Sanders, and it's probably not even close. So, moving on, we have to get into the Eagles players that are going into a contract year, who is going to get an extension, and who is going to walk. Harlem Cowboy in the house. What's up, buddy? I missed you. Thanks for coming to the stream. Now, looking at these guys, the biggest one that stood out to me is TJ Edwards and Mr. Kaiser White coming over on a 1-year deal from the Chargers. You have a exciting linebacker core here with the Philadelphia Eagles to watch, and all these guys are young. You have Nakobe Dean that you drafted in the 3rd round, and then you have TJ Edwards that was coming off his best season by far. He was undrafted from Wisconsin, and he has come into his own, and we're looking to see him get even better with more talent around him on the defense. And Kaiser, 144 tackles with the Chargers last year, 26 years old. So him and TJ are around the same age, and they're both in a contract year. So what is going to happen between those two? Who is going to be kept after the season? That is the biggest story that I am looking for, because I think that the potential of this linebacking core is very, very good. It's probably the best linebacker core that we had in quite some years. So I like what all these guys bring to the table, especially the 3 guys that I mentioned, Nakobe, obviously TJ and Kaiser. But it's going to be tough, because I do not think that we are going to re-sign both of these guys. Whichever one we choose to re-sign, the other one is going to walk in free agency and go to another team. That is the way I see it playing out with the Eagles. But it's going to be a very interesting thing to be looking out for during the season.
Right, and I think if you keep it exclusive to Kaiser White and TJ Edwards when you're talking about the linebacking core, I think really the only thing that Kaiser needs to do to make TJ expendable is to be as good as TJ is in terms of run defense. I think TJ Edwards is the best run defender in the linebacking core as it stands right now. If TJ can enhance, or if Kaiser can enhance that in his bag and be and be kind of an all around type of linebacker and possess that kind of skill set, then I think that's going to be the biggest thing that can separate the two of them. And it's no slight on TJ Edwards, because he has been a great story to this point, another undrafted rookie free agent that the Eagles took a chance on, and he has
here over TJ,
right, and he has made a home here. I mean, TJ Edwards has survived Alex Singleton, he has survived Nate Gary. So he has to provide some sort of value to that linebacking core. So with Kaiser White coming in, on a prove-it deal, TJ working on the last year of the 2-year extension that he received. Really, I mean, you can't go wrong with either one of them. But like I said, I think if Kaiser can really enhance his run defense, being only 26 years old, may I add, he could be a part of the regime going forward, and adding to be one of those staples of the linebacking core, especially when Nakobe Dean is ready. Because I would like to see a tandem between Kaiser and Nakobe for myself, if I'm totally honest.
Absolutely, man. So what about you? I know I said that's the biggest storyline for me, but I know you're a very big fan with Javon Hargrave. Him and Fletch both in a contract year. The writing does seem to be on the wall. Fletch is going to leave unless he comes back on a very much lower salary to be, just a part of the team, being part of leadership with the young guys, not so much as playing a lot of snaps anymore. But for you, what are you thinking about that whole situation? Are you thinking that Javon Hargrave going into his last year, I know you've said that he's going to have a big year. You've said it on this show. So you still stand by that, I'm pretty sure. So what do you see with that whole situation playing out? Do you think they're going to bring back Javon after this season?
I don't see why you wouldn't bring back Hargrave, and if the only gateway to retaining Fletch is if he comes back on a cheaper deal, then so be it. Because in terms of depth along the defensive line, he's going to be one of the premier free agents next year, and if you can maintain him as a Philadelphia Eagle, then there's no reason not to. But in terms of Javon Hargrave, who to this point, I think he has exceeded his expectations coming over from Pittsburgh. That nobody really knew how good of a fit he was supposed to be, and
during his time in Pittsburgh, he was actually viewed as quite a bit of a disappointment.
Right. So coming off of, trying to battle through that pec tear and then coming back from it, people didn't really have all that high expectations of him. They were coming at it saying, let's see what he provides next to Fletcher Cox, and being that Fletch was the focal point still by that time, and I think Fletch still is to a degree. But when you consider the age gap between the two of them, I still think Javon is under 30. I think he's only 29. So, if you can get him, I think Javon is a guy that still has eligibility for an extension even before the season starts. So if you want to lock him up in a way as you don't want to risk it going forward, that if he outperforms this last year on his deal, and you don't want to be in a situation where if the market for defensive linemen ends up getting reset by somebody through big money, I don't think the Eagles want to put themselves in that position. So there's two players on this team that I think are eligible for extensions prior to the season. You can do that with either Hargrave, or I think Darius Slay is another one that is eligible for that kind of extension. More on him in a minute. But, like I said, I mean, Hargrave, to me, he has exceeded expectations coming in from Pittsburgh. He has played a lot better than, people really anticipated. He has taken that role to a different level coming off of that pec tear. And, there has been quite an array of moments where he has outshined Fletch, although Fletcher Cox, we know to be as durable as he is. He's always out there when we need him the most. But going forward, when age starts to become, a consideration in terms of contractual negotiation.
Statistically wise, you can say that he's outperformed Fletch, but I also think that Javon has very much benefited from playing with Fletch, just as any.
A tale of two halves, if you will. Because I mean, how many years we've been complaining that Cox has nobody next to him to be able to prevent Fletch from trying to battle a double team, and now you get Javon Hargrave in here, and now they're starting to double team him. So I mean, now that Jordan Davis is here, well, what are you going to do at that point? But that's besides the point. But still, I think, like I said, in terms of extension eligibility, in terms of the timing, I think it would be more of a benefit for the Eagles to extend him now rather than later, so they don't, subject themselves to any kind of reset of the defensive tackle market.
Yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from. I personally disagree. I think that it's very possible, or maybe not. Maybe it's not very possible. But what I would do is I would not re-sign Javon, depending on what the asking price is going to be for him, and I probably wouldn't bring back Fletch either, unless Fletch is very much willing to take less money and take a lesser role within the team. I think that everything is kind of set up to move towards the future. The one guy that no one is saying anything about is Milton Williams. Do not forget about him. You have Milton and Jordan Davis now, who could be your defensive tackle duo that can develop and get better and grow together as a duo. So as far as the defensive line with the Eagles, especially defensive tackle, we value that position much higher than a lot of other teams do. So would it surprise me we give Javon a deal? It would not surprise me whatsoever. But if you can get a guy that can produce at a lower salary in the free agency market next season, I believe that would be the way to go. So in terms of paying these guys a lot of money, it's not something I would do when you can get a cheaper option that can probably produce around the same rate as those two guys. So I think that it would be wiser to put the money into the other positions.
I think in saying that, having the amount of production as Hargrave is probably more of a stretch than saying Fletch in that kind of discussion. I mean, I'm looking at it like this. What more does Javon have to prove
also, are you going to be willing to sign
kind
a
of
guy
extension?
Are you going to be willing to sign a guy that's going to be 30 years old at the start of next season, which is when the extension would kick in? Would you really be willing to sign him to like a 3 or 4 year deal and then he's on the team with a high salary until he's like 34? It's not something I'd be willing to do. I don't think it would be a smart move.
At 3 years, absolutely. Because I don't think. Well, I mean, Javon is showing you how it is on tape. He's not slowing down. He seems to get better year after year in this defense. So if you can only manage to keep one staple, it's better to have one than none. If you know that Milton is not ready to take that next step, and right now Jordan Davis is a rookie. So I mean, unless we feel that Jordan Davis is going to have this defensive rookie of the year case for him this year to say that, well, okay, we're completely comfortable with not going forward with Javon Hargrave and Fletcher Cox. So you're going to hit the reset button on the defensive line and entrusting a second year player, a rookie, and then depth behind them who's just coming back healthy, and a guy like Marlon Tuipulotu. I don't think the Eagles are necessarily in a position to drop both of those guys, and I feel that Hargrave is better eligible for this kind of extension or retention on the team instead of Fletch.
Totally understand where you're coming from with that. Got some people in the comment section. Shout out to Silver to Barber. Get in a new barbershop in North Philly on North Broad Street. Grand opening on July 25th. So to all my local people watching the show, make sure you guys go to this man. He gives the best fresh cuts that you can get in Philly. So let's move on, guys, to some training camp battles. Lindy, I know that training camp is coming up. It's going to be starting on July 26th. The moment we've been waiting for, as I was saying earlier with Miles Sanders, we are not even in training camp and we're saying crazy stuff. But when we're going to the training camp, man, what battles are we going to be paying the most attention to? What are you thinking about that?
Oh, there's plenty. There's plenty of positions, in my opinion. Well, you can look across the board and say that, well, every position is very entertaining. I mean, you look at the receiver position. Who's going to end up being wide receiver 3 or wide receiver 4 when you got as much depth there as you do? John Hightower seems to be bringing himself back into the conversation. Is a guy like Quez Watkins going to lock down wide receiver 3? What are we going to see out of Jalen Reagor? Special teams contributions. Is it going to be Britton Covey or Devin Allen? I don't think the Eagles can. I don't think they're going to be in a position to keep both of them. I mean, at this point, they might. Who knows? When all you're looking at is Greg Ward, Boston Scott, and Reagor in your special teams, and even if you want to consider Jason Huntley in that spot, I wouldn't personally, because I mean, the limitations that he has in his own right. Linebacker, another easy one. Everyone's going to be eyes peeled on Nakobe Dean to see where he is. I'm sure the same kind of excitement is going to be coming out of Kaiser White. Let's keep going here. Cornerback is going to be another big one to me. Who's going to be that third outside corner? You got depth in guys like Mario Goodrich, who, a part of the tandem of undrafted rookies that they brought in between him and Josh Jobe. Goodrich is a guy that they gave some guaranteed money to. Now, the guaranteed money doesn't guarantee him a roster. It doesn't guarantee him a spot on this roster or nothing.
But
Let's not get that part twisted. But it shows a level of like specific expectation that they got in that certain player to give them that kind of money. So they're going to be looking for something out of Mario Goodrich. Tay Gowan, Kerry Vincent Jr., Zach McPherson. The backup slot position. Does a guy like Josiah Scott have that locked down? You just look across the board in general, but if I had to pick out specific positions, I would have to say the third outside corner spot. I would have to say maybe tight end 2. I don't think Jack Stoll is a lock for that position. I'm thinking Grant Calcaterra is going to have something to say about that. Unfortunately, in the case of Tyree Jackson, it's going to all depend how he comes back from that ACL tear. And when you're a guy that's 6'7", that you're more of a receiving tight end, you may be assigned to some blocking assignments. The taller you are, the worse those kind of ligament injuries are hard to come back from and strengthen. Well, me being a Mavericks fan, I would know that all too well because of Kristaps Porzingis. Thank God he's gone. Little side note, but nonetheless, man, I would have to say the third outside corner spot, tight end 2, and maybe running back number 2. People have some intrigue in Kennedy Brooks as a power back out of Oklahoma. See what he brings to the table. You got Kenny Gainwell, who the Eagles love. That kid out of Memphis, who I think he only played about 2 years or so. He took the 1 year off because of COVID, and him being the cousin to Fletcher Cox. So there's there's a family connection there. They got big things for Kenny. Boston Scott's still here. Jason Huntley's still here. So yeah, if I'll put 3 of them out. I'll put 3 of them out there. Running back 2, corner, outside corner number 3. So CB3, outside corner, and tight end 2 for me.
Training camp for me is all about one Jalen Reagor. So, first round pick. No, I'm not even gonna say.
I know.
Anything disrespectful about him at this point in time.
Yeah.
At this point, we know that he's been a disappointment as a first-round draft pick. And he was supposed to be a big part of our team and our success and our offense. And it has been the complete opposite. That goes without saying. So obviously he has already went down the depth chart because of AJ coming in with the trade. We all get all of that. So obviously he has stuff against him already. So these guys that are, on the bubble trying to compete for a spot, you got guys like Zach Pascal, you got guys like Greg Ward, you got guys like John Hightower that are all on the bubble of making the team or not making the team. So what is he going to do? Is he going to let this, completely do him out of Philly? Or is he going to look at it and say, hey, you know what? People have been talking about me and saying stuff about me. This is one of my last opportunities to prove that I do actually have something in the tank. Is he going to do that, or is he going to, run from the challenge? It's something to keep an eye out for. And then obviously with special teams, he's even more have it stacked up against him than what I just said, because you have Devin Allen, who's an Olympic sprinter. That's, he's got straight up jets. So there's a reason why the team brought him in, despite the fact that he hasn't played football. He hasn't played football since, he was in Oregon in 2015. And he is expected to be one of the favorites for that punt returner spot, which Jalen Reagor had that spot last season and did not perform very well. He had some muff punts and some issues on special teams. So special teams and receiver, you got it stacked up against you, bro. So what are you going to do? Are you going to run from the challenge, or are you going to rise up to the challenge and do something about it and show people that you actually have something to provide to the team? That is what I'm looking for the most in training camp. And I'm not sure if I think that Jalen's going to be able to do it. But you never know. We'll have to wait and see.
No, that's fair. I'm not gonna argue that one at all. I don't think anyone's gonna argue that one, despite especially the fact that I don't think there's anyone left that has faith in him, and it's a shame when you're talking about a first round pick. And a little side note, although this has been regurgitated to the moon and back, the same draft class as Justin Jefferson, who I'll add that Justin Jefferson has not been giving a new contract yet. He will be eligible for a new deal.
Ridiculous right now.
I like, that's what I'm saying. Can you imagine the kind of money that a guy like Justin Jefferson is going to get after seeing some other mediocre receivers getting the money that they did in their respective deals? I mean, no offense, they're some of these guys, the Christian Kirks of the world, they're not Justin Jefferson and all the records that he broke from year one, as a rookie, year two. Yeah. Like, just imagine the kind of money that he is going to get, from the Minnesota Vikings. And
especially when you're looking at people like Deebo Samuel, and people are like hating on him because he really wants a contract. He deserves his contract, And I mean, Justin is. Don't hate on Deebo for trying to get paid when you have these bum receivers that are getting ridiculous salary. Obviously, if they're getting that, then Deebo, Justin Jefferson, they deserve the money. So I really don't understand why people have such an issue with it. Don't hate the player, hate the game. This is the direction the NFL is going, the direction the market is going. Don't hate the player, hate the game.
Yeah, I mean, and this is a kid that's been playing next to Adam Thielen for, how many years now. And Thielen's another respected receiver in this league who I think he goes underrated at times just because of the amount of good receivers that there are in the NFL. You don't really speak of a guy like Adam Thielen all that often now, whether it's because he's on the Minnesota Vikings. That's your call. But the tandem between him and Justin Jefferson was ridiculous, those 2 years, even though Adam, I think, suffers from injury every now and then. I think ticky-tack ones, but still, nonetheless, I mean, I mean, we wish at this point that we were having these conversations about Jalen Reagor and the fit that he was supposed to be for this football team, and those guys at the time falling in love with the explosive dynamic that he possesses between an offensive standpoint and special teams. How twitchy he is, quick with his feet. The context of playing at TCU where he had at least 4 or 5 different quarterbacks at one point. He couldn't develop any chemistry with the person throwing the football, and yet he was putting up all those yardage. Now, take of it what you will from a competition standpoint, but still, I mean, and yeah, Bacon, I get it. I get the size and everything. I completely understand the size. Everyone is to that point now, but it's a shame that it has come to this point where we were hoping for him to be a number 1 caliber receiver, or a guy that's even in Quez Watkins' position right now. If you were to go the direction of having a different number 1 and say the situation at this moment in time is, would Reagor have been good enough to be in number 2 where you still see a dynamic between him and A.J. Brown? How good that would have looked if we were getting the Jalen Reagor that we were hoping to. And, well, it is what it is to this point. And for Reagor's sake, if he can't find a spot on this team, then the best thing that could happen to him is getting a fresh start somewhere else. But he needs to bring it.
Yeah, definitely a lot of pressure on Jalen Reagor, on offense, on special teams, on everything. A lot of interesting stuff with training camp. We have a few minutes left in the show, so I want to do something a little bit interesting. So, Eagles, and before we get to that, I just want to give a special shout-out to another one of our sponsors, a.k.a. Fanatics, the best place to shop for the sports fan gear, officially licensed gear. They're having and I know NBA free agency has been going on right now, so they're having a lot of sales on NBA merch. Make sure you guys use the promo link in the description. If you guys shop using the link instead of just going on the Fanatics app on your own, then whatever you purchase, we will receive a small proceed, and it will really help us out with all of our future goals. So, Philadelphia Eagles, Mount Rushmore. Very interesting stuff. So basically, everyone knows how this works. You pick 4 Eagles that are going to be on the Eagles Mount Rushmore. No question. Every Mount Rushmore, you have to have Brian Dawkins, and you also have to have Reggie White on your Mount Rushmore. Then the other 2 is pretty much up in the air. I'm going to go with Concrete Charlie, Chuck Van Der, because he was a dominant player at 2 positions, linebacker and center. So he's a phenomenal special player. So phenomenal player there. And I also I'm going to go with Andy Reid, because while he did not win the Super Bowl for the team, Andy put the Eagles in the best position to be a successful team, put us in the playoffs year in and year out, won over 100-plus games for us for his career and 14 seasons. I do believe he was let down by Donovan McNabb quite a bit, because as we know, McNabb was simply just not a clutch performing kind of guy, and while Andy Reid has had success with any quarterback that he has coached. So while Doug Peterson did win the very first Super Bowl for the team, Andy Reid took us from an era when we were trash, and he turned us into a perennial playoff team. And I think that if we had a little bit of a better quarterback in clutch situations than what McNabb was able to provide, I do think that we would have broke through one of those seasons when we were in the NFC Championship, when we had all those NFC Championship losses. I do think that we would have broke through if we had a quarterback that wasn't McNabb. That's my Mount Rushmore. What about you?
Right. Well, hopefully I don't rustle anyone's or ruffle any feathers, I should say, so long as Mount Rushmores are subject to change, which I'm sure they are. But Brian Dawkins isn't going anywhere for me. For rights that every Eagles fan knows. And then the other 3, I'm I wanted to go in a little bit of a different direction because, well, I was thinking of anomaly type of players that used to play for the Eagles. So I wanted to throw Harold Carmichael up there. I mean, how often do you see a guy 6'7", 6'8", dominate at his position the way that he did, at that point in his career? I mean, it's just, and good for him to be, a Eagles Hall of Famer. Completely deserved it. That was a bright spot of that day when I heard the news of that, and him getting the recognition that he deserved. So I'll put Harold Carmichael up there. Number 3, well, is it safe to put Foles up there for him being a part of the run of getting us our one and own Lombardi Trophy? And I get it's between him and Doug Peterson, but the difference to me is that Dougie P wasn't on the field, taking the play calls and making the plays the way that Foles was in the biggest moment of not just in the franchise for the Eagles.
Foles is literally the one that told him to run the Philly special.
Right.
Hey, you want to run the Philly special?
Yes.
It was just an awkward pause, and Doug was like, "Yeah,
you want Philly? Yeah, you want Philly? I mean, he still has a statue outside of the link. The dude still has a statue of Doug Peterson out there. I mean, come on. So, I gotta put him. I gotta put him up there for obvious reasons. And again, this is subject to change. They're all subject to change. So Foles would be my number 3, and then number 4. I was number 4. I was, Reggie White's an easy one. I was thinking of Jaws, B. West, Shady McCoy. I don't know, because I'm at a point where there's so many Eagles players that deserve a spot on that, Rushmore. Maybe Asante Samuel you put up there too. Asante. Who was the other 2 vaunted corners that I can't remember from the 90s. Can't think of their names off the top of my head. Yeah, Eric Allen, and the other one. There was two fantastic corners that we had, but that's besides the point. So, who?
Herm Edwards. Remember, he used to coach with the New York Jets. He was on the Eagles. He was a part of the original Miracle in the Meadowlands when he scored a touchdown. Scoop and score.
It was Eric Allen. It was Eric Allen and somebody else, and I can't think of his name right now.
Foles, Carmichael, Brian Dawkins.
Foles, Carmichael, Dawkins, and I got to pick a 4th one, but there's too many to name in my opinion.
You got to pick one.
So, I'll go Reggie White. So we'll match 2. We'll match 2 of ours, and
you have to. Reggie's arguably the greatest.
Reggie's time was too short.
Reggie's
time was too short.
Probably not only probably the best player to ever play for the Eagles. He's arguably the greatest defensive player of all time. So it's actually a no-brainer that Dawkins and Reggie are on the team on the Mount Rushmore, but the other 2 is definitely up for grabs. But I don't know
if you're good enough to still be in today's discussions.
I don't think I would put Asante even in the conversation just because he was only with the team for a couple of years.
Yeah, but
I also wouldn't consider him either, just because I do not think that he was even close to as good as Randall Cunningham was. That's why Randall, obviously replaced him and everything like that. So. As far as I know, it's a pretty interesting list, though, I will say.
Yeah, I mean, but if you're Reggie White,
Dawkins, Reggie, Chuck, and Foles, he's got 3 of my 4. I respect it. The only reason I don't put Foles is because of longevity only.
Yeah,
it's the only reason I cannot put him. mine.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of B-Doc and Reggie White, if you're still in conversations today, and what you call, bless his soul up there for Reggie, but if you're still in conversations today, and who is the best defensive player ever?
13 years old.
If you're still in those kinds of conversations today with like the Lawrence Taylors of the world and everything, I mean, how can you not be on a Mount Rushmore? Here.
Obviously, no-brainer. Reggie, in my opinion, he's the best ever defensive player, period. But anyway, guys, that wraps up another fantastic episode of the Linc'd In Podcast. Before we sign off of here, I just want to say one thing to my man. I was going to say this, but I really didn't want to interrupt my man while he was talking.
There's your context. I got him right there.
I want to say, before we sign off of here, I want to let everyone know we at the Linc'd In Podcast and the Sideline Sports Network do not and never have and never will condone the use of any kind of drugs. So that is all I have to say in regards to this comment, guys. Appreciate you guys for everyone too. Appreciate you guys, everyone for
that's how you had to end it.
On that note, please contact your local person so they can get you some help with that. Well, with that being said, guys, we will see you guys next week at 8:00, same time, same date. Talking Eagles, always a fun time. See you guys.